It's 11 p.m. You've been scrolling for 2 hours. Your thumb moves on autopilot. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, one video after another. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet voice whispers, "What am I even doing?" You're not looking for entertainment. You're not really watching anything. You're just filling the silence, numbing the feeling, distracting yourself from the fact that tomorrow you have to do this all over again. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. And the worst part, you're not even sad. You're just empty. You don't want to die. Not at all. You're just exhausted from having to keep existing. And when people ask what's wrong, you can't point to anything specific because nothing is technically broken. You just feel heavy, like you're carrying invisible weight that no one else can see. If that feeling is familiar, this video is for you. Because what you're experiencing has a name. And it's not weakness, it's not laziness, it's something deeper. And today, we're going to understand exactly what it is, why it happens, and what it actually means about how your mind is trying to survive. Before we go further, if you've spent years feeling this way and no one's ever explained it, subscribe. This channel exists for people whose exhaustion runs deeper than sleep can fix. Hit the bell. You'll want to see what comes next. What this actually is, let's start by calling this thing by its real name. Psychologists call it existential exhaustion, not burnout, not depression, not laziness, existential exhaustion. It's the kind of tiredness that comes not from what you're doing, but from the simple act of being conscious, of being here. Think about what it actually takes to exist as a human being. You wake up, and immediately your brain has to start making decisions. What to wear, what to eat. Should I reply to that text? Should I check my email? What route should I take? What tone should I use in this message? Do I sound okay? Did I say the wrong thing yesterday? Research from Cornell University found that the average adult makes up to 35,000 decisions a day. 35,000? Your ancestors worried about finding food and avoiding predators. You're worrying about email tone, social media captions, what people think of your last message. Whether you're doing enough, being enough, achieving enough, your brain wasn't designed for this. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision making, gets overloaded. And when it does, something called decision fatigue sets in. That's when even simple questions like, "What should I eat for dinner?" feel impossible. Not because you don't know, but because your decision making system has gone on strike. And here's the thing most people don't understand: you're not just tired from big things, you're tired from thousands of tiny, invisible things accumulating into the weight of an entire life. Every time you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Every time you forced a smile to avoid conflict. Every time you showed up when you had nothing left to give. Every single one of those moments adds up. And eventually, your nervous system stops fighting. Not out of weakness, out of depletion. What it looks like from the inside. Here's what makes this so hard to explain to other people. From the outside, you might look completely functional. You go to work, you meet deadlines, you respond to messages, you show up to family dinners, you laugh at the right moments, you perform the role of a person who's doing fine. But inside, everything feels muted. There's a psychological term for this: anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. It's not sadness, it's not pain, it's something more frightening. It's emptiness. Imagine living in grayscale. You see colors, but you don't feel them. Someone tells you good news, and logically, you know you should be happy. But your body doesn't release the feeling. The spark is gone. Music you used to love now feels flat. Conversations you used to enjoy now feel exhausting. Plans you used to look forward to now feel like obligations you have to get through. And the worst part, you start to miss the old version of yourself. The one who knew how to feel excited, the one who looked forward to things, the one who still had energy to care. But that version feels so far away now that you're not even sure it was real. This happens because your brain's reward system, the part that produces dopamine, has been overworked for so long that it's stopped responding. It's learned that joy is unreliable, that hope leads to disappointment, so it stops reaching. It's safer to expect nothing than to be let down again. And when you can't feel joy, your nervous system starts looking for safety instead. That's why you rewatch the same show for the 10th time instead of starting something new. Not because you're lazy, because your exhausted brain craves predictability. You already know how that show ends. No surprises, no emotional risk. It's a completely safe zone. Same with scrolling. You know you're wasting time. You feel guilty while you're doing it, but you still can't stop because scrolling is predictable. It asks nothing of you. And right now, even the smallest emotional demand feels like too much. Why relationships feel impossible. And here's where it gets even harder. People who are tired of existing often end up in a suffocating loop. They desperately want to be understood, but at the same time, they pull away from everyone because explaining themselves feels impossible. You see a message from a close friend. Hey, how have you been? Want to grab coffee? For most people, that's just an invitation. For someone dealing with existential exhaustion, it feels like a threat to the little energy they have left. Your brain immediately starts calculating. If I say yes, I have to shower, get dressed, drive there, sit and smile, talk about my life, listen to theirs, pretend I have energy, pretend I'm okay. You don't hate your friends, you love them. But replying to that message right now feels as heavy as writing a thesis. So you leave it on read, or you reply 3 days later with something short. I've been really busy. Let's catch up soon. And then you feel guilty because you know you're isolating yourself. You know loneliness is eating away at you. But you'd rather endure that loneliness than take on someone else's emotions because your energy tank is completely empty. There's not even a drop left to give anyone else. Psychologists call this calculated withdrawal. It's not that you don't care, it's that your nervous system physically cannot handle one more emotional demand. And from the outside, people think you're cold, distant, uncaring. But they don't see the invisible weight you're carrying just to make it through a single day. The performance no one sees. Here's the tragedy of being tired of existing. You become very, very good at pretending you're okay. You wake up, you put on clothes, you fix your hair, you walk into work, greet your coworkers, meet your deadlines, you smile at appropriate times, you laugh along with small talk. You might even be the person others come to for advice. From the outside, the system reads green. They're doing great. They're fine. No one throws a life raft to someone who looks like they're swimming just fine. But they don't see what happens the moment you get home. The second the door closes behind you, the smile drops. Like a stage curtain being cut loose. Your whole body collapses. You can't even change out of your work clothes. You fall onto the bed, staring into the dark, realizing that all your energy for the day was spent on performing a role called a normal person. And wearing that mask over and over again slowly wears down your soul. It teaches your brain a painful lesson. Your pain has no place in the real world. Society rewards productivity. It doesn't reward the invisible battle you fight with your own mind just to get out of bed. So you learn to hide it, you learn to function, you learn to survive. But inside, you're drowning. What most people misunderstand. Here's what nobody tells you about being tired of existing. It doesn't mean you're weak. It often means you've been strong for too long. You've carried emotions you never processed, responsibilities you never asked for, expectations that no one could possibly meet. And after years of pretending that weight doesn't matter, your spirit finally whispers, I can't keep doing this. There's a difference between suicidal ideation and existential exhaustion. Suicidal people want an end. Exhausted people just want rest. They want permission to not try so hard, to not perform, to not maintain the facade. But there's no socially acceptable way to say that. So they stay quiet, they function, they do what's expected, but inside they're drowning in the weight of just being. And no one sees it because they've gotten very good at hiding it. And here's the cruelest part. The world doesn't just ignore your exhaustion. It punishes you for it. When you can't reply to messages, people call you distant. When you cancel plans, they call you flaky. When you need time alone, they call you antisocial. When you stop forcing joy, they ask, Why are you being so negative? But they don't understand. They're not carrying what you're carrying, they're not fighting what you're fighting. And the weight of their judgment just makes the exhaustion heavier. Where this comes from. So, where does this come from? Often it's an accumulation, not one big trauma, but years of small things piling up, years of disappointment, years of trying and failing, years of hoping things would get better and watching them stay the same, years of being told you matter while feeling completely insignificant in the vastness of everything. Sometimes it comes from awareness, from understanding too much about how the world works, about systems of power, injustice, suffering, the randomness of existence. When you see too clearly how arbitrary everything is, it's hard to keep caring. It's hard to keep showing up to a game you know is rigged. And sometimes it just emerges from nowhere. Brain chemistry shifts, neurotransmitters stop functioning properly, and suddenly existence feels impossible for reasons you can't explain or control. But here's something important. This state is often linked to something psychologists call learned helplessness. When you're repeatedly exposed to situations you can't control, your brain eventually learns that effort doesn't matter, that trying is pointless. So you stop trying, not because you're weak, but because trying has proven over and over again to be futile. And existing without trying, without hope, without expectation, is its own special kind of exhaustion. What your exhaustion is actually telling you. But here's where things shift. What if your exhaustion isn't the problem? What if it's a signal? A message from your subconscious saying something in your life is no longer aligned with who you are. Because here's the truth most people never hear. When you're tired of existing, it's not because you want to give up, it's because you want something deeper to live for. You want a reason that makes waking up feel worth it again, a reason that's bigger than obligation or habit. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived concentration camps during World War II, wrote something profound. He said that humans can endure almost anyhow if they have a why. When people lose their why, everything becomes heavy. Wake up, work, scroll, sleep, repeat. Days blur together, and slowly they start asking, what's the point? But that question isn't hopeless. It's actually a sign of awakening. Because when your soul asks, what's the point? It's really saying, I need a reason to stay. And that realization, as painful as it feels, is where transformation can begin. Because your tiredness isn't random, it's pointing you towards something. Maybe toward slowness, maybe toward honesty, maybe toward meaning. Your exhaustion is a compass, and it's trying to tell you that the life you're living no longer fits the person you've become. What actually helps? So, what do you do when you feel this tired? The answer isn't to overhaul your life overnight, it's to begin small acts of honesty. Start noticing what drains you, start noticing what nourishes you, not in a dramatic way, just gently. Maybe it's certain people, maybe it's your routine, maybe it's the version of yourself that's always trying to appear strong. Once you see those patterns, you can begin to release them. Not all at once, but slowly. Here's something most people overlook. Energy doesn't just come from sleep or nutrition. It comes from alignment. When your actions reflect your values, you feel light. When they don't, even small tasks feel impossible. That's why you can work 12 hours on something you love and feel energized. But 2 hours on something you hate feels like it's destroying you. The body follows the soul. So here's what helps. First, drop the performance, even temporarily. Psychologist Carl Jung talked about the persona, the social mask we wear to function in the world. The problem is, the gap between the emptiness inside and the smiling mask outside becomes too wide. Give yourself permission to take it off. Send a message to people close to you. My battery is really low right now, so I'm going offline for a bit. It's not about you. I just need space to breathe. Being honest about your exhaustion removes the pressure to pretend you're okay. Second, reduce decisions. When you're exhausted, your brain can't handle 35,000 decisions a day. So simplify. Wear the same 3 outfits. Eat the same simple meals. Turn your life into temporary autopilot. Why? Because a tired nervous system craves predictability. When you eliminate unnecessary choices, you remove chaos. You create a safe, steady track your body can follow without burning energy on analysis. Third, real rest, not junk rest. Scrolling for 4 hours isn't rest. Your eyes are processing blue light. Your dopamine system is getting hit with spikes and crashes. Your nervous system is running a marathon while your body lies still. Real rest means cutting off sensory input. Put your phone in another room. Lie on your back. Close your eyes. No music, no podcast, no screens. Just lie there for 15 minutes. Your brain will scream, "This is boring." Let it scream. Don't react. If you can sit through the first 5 minutes of discomfort, a biological shift begins. Your fight or flight system turns off. Your rest and digest system turns on. And your body begins repairing stress damaged cells. That's when you're actually recharging. The paradox of exhaustion. Here's the paradox of being tired of existing. It strips life down to its essentials. It removes the noise, the performance, the illusion. And in that stripped down state, you're forced to ask, what actually matters? Not what your parents told you matters, not what society says matters, but what actually genuinely matters to you. And that question, as heavy as it feels, is sacred because it's the beginning of building a life that's true. Not perfect, but true. People who've known the weight of existential exhaustion often become the most compassionate souls you'll ever meet. They understand pain without words. They sense when others are struggling, even behind smiles. They've learned that pretending doesn't heal. And maybe that's the quiet gift of being tired of existing. It humbles you. It forces you to stop chasing things that don't matter. It teaches you that life isn't about constant achievement or endless motion. It's about alignment, about finding the quiet spaces where you can breathe without pretending. What I want you to remember, if you're in that place right now, where even simple things feel hard, where each day blurs into the next, I want you to remember this. You are not behind. You are not broken. Your tiredness is not a flaw. It's a compass. It's pointing you back toward something real. There will always be moments where the weight returns, days where you question everything, but now you'll recognize it. Not as the end, but as a signal. A reminder that you are someone who feels deeply, who thinks deeply, who lives deeply, and that's something to be proud of. Because maybe being tired of existing doesn't mean you failed at life. Maybe it means you finally paused long enough to realize that life deserves to be lived consciously, not just endured. And that pause, that breath, that gentle awareness might just be the beginning of everything you've been searching for. The shift. Here's what happens when you stop running from your exhaustion. You start to notice small things again, not the loud, cinematic kind of beauty, but the subtle kind. The way sunlight spills across your room in the morning, the smell of coffee, the way your favorite song makes you feel seen. These tiny anchors remind you that life doesn't have to be extraordinary to be meaningful. It just has to be felt. And feeling is something we unlearn as we grow older. We are taught to analyze, to optimize, to stay productive. But we are rarely taught to simply feel, to sit with sadness without fixing it, to hold joy without fearing it will vanish. People who are tired of existing are often the ones who've lost touch with that raw emotional connection to life. They've become numb, not because they don't care, but because caring has hurt too much. The way back isn't through more control, it's through surrender, through allowing yourself to be human again, to cry without justification, to rest without guilt, to admit that maybe you don't have all the answers right now. And that's okay. Because sometimes the most courageous thing you can do isn't to keep pushing forward, it's to stop, breathe, and start again from a place of truth. So here's what I want to leave you with. If you're tired of existing, you're not alone. You're not strange. You're simply human. in a world that often forgets how to rest. You don't need to fix everything at once. You don't need to force joy or fake energy. All you need to do, just for now, is stop running from your tiredness and start hearing what it's trying to tell you. Because sometimes being tired of existing isn't the end, it's the beginning of living differently. Not louder, not faster, not more productively, just more honestly, more gently, more aligned with who you actually are. And one day, when you're ready, when you're rested, when the weight has lifted even slightly, you might remember what it feels like to want to be here. Not just to endure, but to actually be here. Until then, be gentle with yourself. If this video describes something you felt, but never had the words for, do two things. First, subscribe. Second, tell me in the comments, what's one thing you're tired of that no one else seems to understand?